Biden and Donald Trump are having to accept that the 2020 campaign...
Defiant protesters remain on streets of Sudan after the country's armed forces launched a military coup. Chanting and waving flags, they have blocked roads in the capital Khartoum and around the countries following the takeover. On Monday, the 25th of October, coup leader General Abdelfattah Burhan dissolved civilian rule, arrested political leaders, and called a state of emergency. Soldiers were reportedly to have opened fire on crowds and reportedly killed 10 people. According to media reports, General Burhan has said Monday's coup was justified to avoid civil war and that the detained prime minister will be returned to his home the following day. Earlier, he sought to justify the takeover by blaming political infighting. The coup has drawn global condemnation as the UN Security Council jumped to action on Tuesday to meet and discuss the crisis. Troops are reported to have been going house to house in Khartoum, arresting local protest organizers. The city's airport is closed and international flights are suspended. The internet and most phone lines are also down. Central bank staff have reportedly gone on strike, and across the country, doctors are said to be refusing to work in military-run hospitals except in emergencies. Civilian leaders and their military counterparts have been at odds since longtime ruler Omar al-Bashir was overthrown in 2019. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the military's actions are a betrayal of Sudan's peaceful revolution. Hence, the U.S. has halted $700 million in aid. After a night of protests, demonstrators remained on the street on Tuesday morning, demanding the return of civilian rule. Civilian rule is the people's choice, they chanted as they set up barricades of burning tires. Many women are also taking part, shouting no to military rule. The protests continued despite troops opening fire on demonstrators on Monday. One wounded protester told reporters that he was shot in the leg by the army outside the military headquarters, while another described the military firing first stun grenades, then live ammunition. As this event involving military takeover continues to rise in Africa, taking note of similar events in Uganda and Guinea-Conakry, the question comes to mind as to what the future holds for democracy in Africa. Is Africa's democracy under threat? We'll find out on today's edition of the program. Welcome to Politics Global. My guest joins me in a minute, right after this break. Stay with us. This is Politics Global. We're reaching you from KAFTAN Television studios in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now, my guest, Labode Obanor, a social justice advocate and president of the League for Social Justice, joins me to discuss Sudan's military coup in this edition of the program. It's good to have you join me.
Thank you, Benga. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Here. You know, the last time I saw you, the last time we had a conversation, it was virtual.
Yes.
And you were in the United States.
Yes.
And it's good to have you here physically this time
It's
around.
always a pleasure to be in Abuja.
I
Thanks.
hope it is not connected to the ongoing Anambra elections. I mean, you're coming to
Oh,
town.
no, absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
Well, it wouldn't be a bad idea, you know, having brilliant minds to come and support, you know, the political process that's going on back home.
Well, I think the police are doing a great job invading and dominating the entire Anambra state, so that's a different story.
Entirely different story.
Yeah.
All right, but let's begin with this conversation that's almost becoming very worrying. It's worrisome because, like I said in the introduction, we have, within the last few months, we've seen military takeover in democratic processes. I mean, for Sudan, for example, they haven't even had a full-fledged democratic government yet, if you check it out.
Yes.
And then you go back to Guinea-Conakry, where about 3 months ago, you had the military also stage a coup there.
Yes.
And you saw the people of Guinea-Conakry, you know, march out in victory as if, I mean, it was a victory that had been achieved. And you also have the case of Uganda, where similar cases are going on. Yes. So let me begin by asking you, first of all, what is the main cause of this military action going on in Sudan before we now start to relate it to all the other countries in Africa as it is emerging?
Yeah, thank you, Benga, for that question. Frankly, I still don't understand the essence of this takeover. As you know, the previous dictator was toppled in 2019, brutally ran the entire Sudan for 30 years. So we were hoping that with this new transition government in place, we will see a process towards a more democratic government. And this was an agreement that was reached between the military and the civilian in the form of a power sharing scheme. Right. So the idea was to have an election take place in 2023. So why they go through the interim process. Now, why intervene? Why interrupt that process based on a bogus political infighting? It makes no sense to me. Infighting politics is about infighting. If people don't fight and argue and discuss, then we don't have politics. I've seen advanced democracy that people actually resort in verbal conflict, as long as it doesn't result in physical conflict. But people can argue, people can talk about the prospect of growth and how the interim process should take place. It is not a license or a reason to topple a democratic process. So I think it's all power grab by by the military to try to derail what Sudan is trying to accomplish.
Okay, let me agree that it is mere power grab. But would you say that the transition government that's in Sudan at the moment and is trying to stabilize, the democratic process in Sudan, would you say that it has proved itself worthy? Because let's not forget, like you mentioned, we've had a dictatorship government that's been there for 30 years and must have directly or indirectly impacted on the minds of Sudanese where it comes to governance and what it should be. And also the fact that military cannot be far-fetched where it comes to their day-to-day activities, since it is a power-sharing system at the moment. Do you think that the representing government right now, that's the transition government, is doing enough in terms of proving to the people and of course to the other party whom is sharing power with to be doing enough to be better than the military government?
Benga, it's an interim government. It's a transitional interim government. They've only been in existence for 2 years.
2 years.
Allow the process to run its course. Things are beginning to take place. The international community are beginning to recognize that Sudan is gradually going from a military dictatorship country to a more progressive democratic country. In fact, there are even talks that the United States were going to wipe away their debt. And Sudan is also making some concession about, paying back the victims of USS Cole what happened in Sudan a few years ago. So to interrupt that process in a merely 2 years of existence, just because you feel that they are fighting, it makes no sense. Even the people are not agreeing with the military. They are opposing this move. They want the process to run its course. The military should have allowed the process to run its course rather than prematurely terminating it. Again, this is power grab. Africa is now being ripe, taken back to where we started from in the 1960s and 1970s, where it's a spate of military coup all over Africa. Gradually, we are returning back to that era, unfortunately. And partly this has to do because of the situation in Africa, the bad governments and all kinds of things that create an impetus for such a military takeover.
All right. Now, I'm excited because you talked about the people, who do not like this. And I'd like to bring this to juxtapose it with similar events that we've had. Now, recently, I think sometime in September or August, we had the military takeover in Guinea-Conakry. And in Guinea-Conakry, unlike this one that you have, you had the residents and its citizens of Guinea march out in Conakry in victory. I mean, they were happy that a military had taken over. Now, juxtaposing these two situations, how would you relate? How would you describe it? How does these two relate? Or what does it tell us about understanding and acceptance of military government in Africa and that of democracy?
Benga, unfortunately, democracy has not delivered the dividend that it promised Africans people. In the 1960s, where after the independence, there was a wave of independence over Africa. we have military intervention. And those military intervention was premature, was explicit, and before you know it, the people came out and rallied and protested and fight for some kind of a democratic process. Lives were lost. People paid the ultimate sacrifice to have us have a democratic system. And what happened after years of that, we were able to get over the military situation. Nigeria has its share of military coup, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, all over Africa. Now that the people have tasted civilian rule, they have come to that conclusion that their salvation is not with the people anymore. It's supposed to be a democracy for the people, by the people, right? But what is going on now, the civilian government that has taken over from the military are worse than the military. They are worse than the military. They have reduced democracy to be electioneering and running election. That's not what democracy is about. Democracy is about delivering to the people. It's about good governance. It's about yielding to the yearning of the people. Providing infrastructure, things that will make the life of an average African man better. That is what democracy is. So if you just reduce democracy to election, then you are totally missing it. So after all these years, you have a situation whereby the people felt that, okay, in the case of Guinea that you mentioned, they felt that we have tasted civilian rule and behold, we have not gotten anything better out of it. So maybe going back to military will save them. But it's a bad idea, but that's the way the people are thinking right now because the civilian has failed them.
All right, it's very, very interesting to have this, especially because there are many opinions regarding it. Now, but I would like us to go back. So what we've had in Africa was years upon years of military juntas. And then these juntas, over time had been a struggle, for democracy to be returned. And for example, in Nigeria, we returned to democracy facially, for a long time running in 1999. And a lot of African countries are like that. But a lot of people do question even Nigeria's democracy in the sense that they say, when you look at the political class, you realize that a lot of them are repentant generals. They are repentant. And then this is also practical because when you look at the government of Sudan as we speak, a part is being managed, is being run by the military. And then a part is being run by civilians. Okay. So there is this power sharing that still exists between the military and Democrats and democracy in Africa. So my question to you is, at what point or what would we have done to have departed totally, from military government, knowing fully well that we do not want to go back there? I'm very certain, for example, that Nigeria will never think of it, of going back to a military administration. Neither will any African country desire it. But it keeps coming. And even if you come back home, a lot of people are saying it is not impossible given the current situations that we have in Nigeria. So at what point would we have done, what would we have done in the past or maybe the present to have ensured that we totally departed from a